Hey everyone, welcome to this next episode of Heroic Nonsense, where we'll be looking at Legacy Evolution Nova Prime, the charismatic and one-time leader of a united Cybertron after the Great War before his descent into madness. Stick around until the end for a bunch of great team builds, both from the IDW storyline as well as some of my fun display ideas. Lots to talk about in this video as we explore the toy as well as the character's backstory from the comics. But as always, before we get into the figure himself, let's dive into the box art, which is really quite striking, with Nova Prime gearing up for what looks like some major action while some other bots fight on a platform that looks like it could be in the Senate. The back of the box nicely showcases the figure in both modes as well as his unarmored version and Cybertronian cab. And now here we are in all his glory, Nova Prime. First impression for me was how imposing he looked with his flared robotic angel wings, tower lasers on his back, and Regal Prime styled head. Those familiar with this mold will know it's basically the War for Cybertron Ultra Magnus figure, but with some significant retooling, which I will get into a bit later in this video. The color scheme is essentially white and gunmetal gray for the wings, upper legs, and chest plate, which surprisingly looks great together and offers a nice contrast for such a simple color scheme. Sprinkled throughout to add some highlights and break up the monotony are mostly gold accents befitting of this character's personality, with a small touch of metallic blue-gray on his leg vents and face and chest plate. It's all topped off with some lighter non-metallic blue-gray detailing, mostly on his cannons and parts of his arms. As far as the figure itself goes, it's nice and bulky with some detailed add-ons for the lower arms, added shoulder armor and wings. The chest plate also complements his character well with an outline of what looks to be the Autobot Elite Guard symbol, a special unit formed out of the remnants of Nova Prime's Primal Vanguard, or even the symbol of the Senate that appears on Senator Ratbat's chest. Topping it off are the two laser cannons on his back, which, once his laser is added to the left cannon, makes his figure quite tall. No real empty space on this figure other than some on his cannons, which doesn't really bother me much at all. For me, the crowning feature of this robot mode are those angelic wings. I mean, look at the details on these things. Yes, it would have been nice if they were posable or could flare open or close, but given what we got, the design team did an excellent job. It certainly adds to the godlike stature of this figure and fits in nicely with the aesthetics of the other Transformers in this IDW subline. The detailing also has some nice manga aesthetics and just makes for an awesome figure to display in your collection. Coming in a close second is his head design. I love seeing all the different versions of Optimus Prime's faceplate and helmet, and I have to admit I usually pick up a bot if he has that look. For example, Nemesis Prime or even Optimus Primal. In this case, you have those Galactus-style antenna, a more aggressively defined helmet, and extra armor covering the bottom of his faceplate that adds so much character to this figure. The extra bonus is that this faceplate fits into the lore from the IDW comic, and hopefully they make a Sentinel Prime that I can place next to all my other Primes. I'll definitely show that image in a review if that happens. For now, here's what his head looks like next to Earthrise Optimus's. Finally, to make this figure even more fun and adding to the playability factor for my kids and for display purposes as well, each of the back cannons can flip down 270 degrees and fit into Nova Prime's hands to become huge cannon blasters. I've got to say, adding in his two other arm lasers that come with this figure with some blast effects across the board creates quite an amazing look. Before we head off to his Cybertronian railgun big rig form, here's a quick look at his inner robot, which is again almost an exact copy of his Ultra Magnus siege mold, though mostly having some different detailing around the chest plate. As far as I can tell, we haven't seen what Nova Prime looked like in the IDW continuity as Nova Major before taking on the mantle of Nova Prime, so not sure this inner robot is canon. However, if you want to have some fun with this concept, no reason why you can't imagine this robot as Nova Major himself. Now let's transform this bot and see what he looks like in his Cybertronian vehicle mode. Overall, he's a cool, sleek-looking futuristic truck, and I think this mode does an overall better job than the War for Cybertron Ultra Magnus trailer. His wings blend in pretty seamlessly on the sides to hide a lot of the empty, useless space that Ultra Magnus had, and all the firepower is very striking on Nova Prime in both modes. This back part of the truck is where I'd say the bulk of the retooling is the most apparent, though you can see some updates to the cab as well, particularly with the sloped and angled windows and grille. Taking a look head on, you can see the excellent detailing Nova Prime's cab was given, and once again, some of those nice gold highlights. You also get a nice range of heights and arcing motion for each of the huge cannons. For some size comparison, I've placed him here next to Earthrise Optimus Prime's cab, which showcases his larger stature, which I think works well canon and lore-wise, as he had a bigger-than-life persona in the IDW comics. As promised, let's take a look at Nova Prime next to his mold companion, War for Cybertron Ultra Magnus. It's quite obvious that Nova Prime's extra armor and weapon pieces, mixed in with his color scheme and detailing, places him way above the Magnus figure in my eyes. He just looks that much more impressive for some reason, and it didn't take much in robot mode to do so. The cleaner feel also adds a premium quality finish to Nova Prime. Don't take this as me bashing the Ultra Magnus figure at all. It had its time and place, and my kids still love playing with it. But given the Nova Prime upgrades and the new Studio Series 86 Ultra Magnus, which I just reviewed, which you can watch by checking out the link here or below, it's time for me to retire it from my display. I'd say they still look good together though, and there are a bunch of ways you could probably incorporate it into your displays. Here you can see the inner bots next to each other, and they're both equally fine to me. I don't think one stands out over the other. Even the heads are generally the same, other than some color changes. Truck-wise, I think Nova Prime does this mold a bit better. It just looks a bit more complete and thought out, especially since you can't really use the back of Ultra Magnus to transport any other Autobots. Same for the front. I like the look a bit better for Nova Prime, but honestly, they're both fine. You can see the specific retooling of the cab portion, and interesting to me how they accomplished the small differences, which you'll see shortly in the step-by-step transformation part of this episode. Overall, though, it is essentially the same cab and has almost identical transformation. Alright, transforming time. So let's first start by taking off these arm guards, which will form the front wheels and grille of Nova Prime's truck mode. You can bend in the grille portion now if you like. You can see here what it will look like. And we'll take off this other one, which is a bit snug on mine. Then we'll take off both shoulder armor pieces, which actually won't become anything, and will be stored away in his trailer portion. Just like War for Cybertron Ultra Magnus, his leg armor will come off as well, which will form the back of his trailer, and you can place those aside for now as well. Next, we'll slightly pull up his chest plate and just take off his entire head and upper armor part by pulling this portion out from what I like to call his spine right over here. And you can place this aside as well. Very quickly, I'll show you how to transform his inner bot by first pulling out the heels of his feet like this, and then opening up his shoulders, which are on a hinge, so that you can pull down this front cab portion that houses his head. I pull down the belt portion as well. Once it's open, you can just flip up his head and push the front cab portion back in place and reattach his shoulders, which I've left open for the moment since I'm going to immediately transform it into his cab. To transform the inner robot into his truck cab, simply pull down the belt and front cab portion again, like this, and then just flip back his head and close it all up. You only need to do this if you didn't go directly from the fully armored Nova Prime to the truck cab. Now turn him around, place your index fingers on his front belt portion, and push the entire back forward with your thumbs. You can now see this gap here on the back. Flip his waist 180 degrees, like this, and pull his legs 90 degrees backwards. These are on a ratchet, so you'll need a bit of force. And then just close up the heels and tab in the legs into each other. This part seems a bit tricky, but really isn't so bad. Just keep pushing the shoulder part back as you rotate his lower arm backwards until it's at a 90-degree angle from his upper arm. This will tab into place, and just do the same thing for the other arm. Again, here's the tab to tab it into place. Now you're almost done. As you can see, we're missing the front wheels, which is different than the War for Cybertron figure where they're still attached. So take these arm guards from earlier and simply tab it into the protruding part here. On which side is it? It's on this side. And then you're going to do the same thing for the other wheel, like this. And there you have it. Nova Prime's cab portion ready to be attached to his trailer. Here we have all his back pieces nicely laid out. So take one of his side leg armor pieces and take this piece of shoulder armor with the small circle facing down in this direction. You're going to fit it into the empty part of his leg, though it won't actually tab into anything, and just lie there loose. Do the same for the other side leg armor and shoulder armor, then take both parts and carefully, without dropping the loose shoulder pieces, and tab together like this. You can see those two shoulder armor pieces just sitting there and should look like this. Put this aside and grab the head armor piece, which will form the bulk of his back. This transformation is actually all pretty much new from Ultra Magnus. Flip up his chest armor like so and push down this part. Rotate each of these cannons down 180 degrees and then turn it until they're facing the other side. Now turn the whole thing around and lift these connector pieces up. And then you'll lift up this rectangular piece and unhinge it by pushing forward and flipping it open. Like this. To get your bearings, you can push in the wings and then line up this most recent part. Now finish rotating the cannons forward, and you can see the back is now taking shape. Rotate back these two connector pieces. To give yourself some room, open back up these wings so that you can move this piece into place, which will tap right in here. Give it a good push until you hear it click in. You can either put the back portion on now or attach the middle portion to the cab. Here I did the latter first. Similar to Ultra Magnus, you'll line up this bottom portion to what I just showed you on the cab, and this tab to the spine of the cab, so it all clicks together nice and tight. You'll then click this wing portion tight into this protruding tab on the legs of the cab, and do the same for the other side. Finally, we'll take this back portion and attach it to these two connectors, which is reminiscent of Ultra Magnus but not exactly the same piece. These are the two corresponding pieces you need to connect. And then new to Nova Prime, you also need to ensure these top tabs connect with these slots up here. I recommend using a bit of force since it's a bit finicky, just to get everything to line up properly. The main point is that you want the back portion to be completely in line with the rest of the truck. And there you have it. So now all you need to do, if you like, is to just add on these lasers right here onto the side, or wherever you really like, and then this top laser over here. And then Nova Prime is ready to punch through whatever comes his way. So here's where we have a bit of fun and get a little creative. As Nova Prime is part of this IDW subline from Transformers Legacy Evolution, I created a display with Senator Ratbat, and in a second with Megatron as well, before he formed the Decepticons and was still an Energon miner at Nova Point. I haven't opened my set of Orion packs and Senator Shockwave yet, so I can't put these all in a display together for this video, but I will show it to you guys once I do that review. Now, the IDW timeline doesn't exactly match up with the versions of all these figures from what I recall of the comics, but I still put them together here for my own bit of world building, with Megatron being held in handcuffs before the Senate. I also took Alphatron from the Transformers Legacy 2-pack with Orion packs and put him in a display with Nova Prime, who has him activating Vector Sigma. A more accurate IDW display is this one with Alphatron introducing Nova Prime to Galvatron with the hopes of ending the Great War. Galvatron eventually joins Nova Prime and Cyclonus into the Dead universe, where Nova Prime ultimately becomes Nemesis Prime for a period of time. I really like this display and think these guys look great together. So for a great read, check out this storyline from the 2005 and beyond IDW continuity if you can get your hands on it. These last few displays are also taken from various IDW stories. Here we have Nova Prime inviting Omega Supreme to join his crew in order to help Nova Prime bring about the legendary golden age of Cybertron. At some point later on in the IDW storyline, Nova Prime reverts back to himself after being Nemesis Prime and gets into a battle with Optimus, who ultimately destroys him. Still another earlier storyline had Ironhide punching Nova Prime back into the Dead universe, which I've recreated here. Finally, we have Starscream, who is leader of Cybertron for a short period of time in the IDW continuity, standing in front of a statue of Nova Prime and then scolding Optimus Prime and how the Prime lineage had always been corrupt. To cap off all these builds, I put some of the recent G1 inspired figures together with Nova Prime for a fun bit of world building. Here you can see Nova Prime, Orion Pax, and Bumblebee and Jazz from the buzzworthy Bumblebee line all traveling together on Cybertron. It's always fun to take these pre-G1 and G1 figures and create some cool displays of a time when all the Transformers lived together and interacted with each other on Cybertron before Optimus and his crew crashed on Earth all those millions of years ago. As I really love the Senator Ratbat figure, I'm ending this part with Nova Prime and Ratbat racing off from the Senate on Cybertron to some devious mission only Nova Prime knows the true nature of. So that's it for my review of Transformers Evolution Nova Prime. I really hope you enjoyed this one, as I wanted to not only give you guys a closer look at the toy itself and transformation, but a bit of his backstory from the IDW comics, which inspired a lot of my display builds. As always, thank you for those who are helping me grow this channel and have already commented and subscribed. For everyone else, hoping that I've piqued your interest enough to comment and subscribe so I can keep making these videos for you and bringing our love of Transformers to life on here. See you next time, and remember, it's all such heroic nonsense in the end.
Bravo!